Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 2020 Chevy Camaro LT1. Up front is a 6.2 liter V8 and down below is a 10-speed automatic transmission that we will be talking a lot about.
This video is sponsored by CarMarshal.com. If you'd like to support the channel, click the link down in the description below. CarMarshal.com advertises for over 100,000 vehicles across the US.
But let's get back to that 6.2 liter V8. It's nothing really new here. It's nothing really groundbreaking. It's a 6.2 liter V8. It does everything you want it to do. It shouts at you. It has plenty of power, plenty of torque, and it offers a very fun ride. What I really want to talk about is the 10-speed automatic. Now, some people right off the bat, for some reason still here in 2019, think that automatics are horrible, terrible things, whatever. This might be one of my favorite transmissions ever, besides the Porsche PDK, because this feels almost identical to a PDK. It shifts incredibly fast. It's insane. Now, 7th gear is 1-to-1, which is pretty high for a 1-to-1, but I cannot get over how fast this thing shifts. It's amazing. I am not kidding when I tell you I drove a 2018 ZL1 Camaro, and I genuinely think about that car's 10-speed automatic. Not daily, but I think about that transmission a lot. Just downshifting is so brutal, so quick in transmissions like this. It's really a joy, and honestly, I would take the automatic over the manual in this scenario. So I will do an exhaust clip, but just for acceleration, so you can hear how fast it accelerates. Once we come around this little curve, I'll do a pull, and you should be able to hear how fast it really does shift gears. Ooh, tons and tons of pops as well. That was, of course, in sport mode. I hope you guys heard how fast that thing shifts. It is incredibly fast. And just click to downshift. Oh, it's so good. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The transmission really makes this Camaro. It's what separates it from the boys. The boys and the men are separated by that transmission, and I don't think I can love a transmission, at least an automatic transmission, any more than this, because it is something else, and it's something you absolutely have to experience. Other than that, it is just a rear-wheel drive setup. There is no all-wheel drive Camaro currently offered, although I feel like Chevy might go that way in a couple years. Maybe, to compete with the Challenger, maybe with the V6, but we'll see. So let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have a bunch of physical gauges, which I actually like. That is part of the V6-ness of this car, and we'll talk about that later. But I do have physical gauges. On the far left is my tachometer. Then I have my fuel, coolant temperature, and tachometer on the right, as well as I have a little center display screen. This is pretty normal for modern Chevys. A lot of this stuff is parts bins, and I'll talk about that later. But the thing that's really interesting is that when you put this car into eco mode, a little V8 icon comes up at the bottom right-hand corner. It actually does have cylinder deactivation. So right now I'm just cruising. It says V4 because I'm only using 4 cylinders, but we'll give it the beans, and that V8 is back. And the pops are back. So on the steering wheel, I have a couple interesting things. First of all, I do have paddle shifters, which is what I was shifting with when we did that pull, which is absolutely awesome. They're super responsive. But on the right, I do have my hang up, my voice activation, my selector buttons, and on the left, I have cruise control. And of course, I have my favorite buttons and my volume switches as well. I don't mind the steering wheel. I think it's all right. It's a little oddly shaped. It's a flat bottom steering wheel. I'm not a big fan of flat bottom steering wheels, but other than that, I think it's a really good steering wheel. To the left, we do have just a heating and cooling vent. I don't actually have any buttons directly to the left, but on the door, I do have my lock and unlock, window switches, mirror switches, pretty standard stuff there. Then we get into the center console. We do have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You can get a Wi-Fi hotspot through Chevy that is offered in the Camaros, as well as all of their other cars. It's a touch screen. The backup camera is really, really clear. I really like that. I think it's a really, really nice backup camera, and since everyone is now legally required to have a backup camera, it really does separate quality cars from cheap cars, just how clear those screens are, and this has a very, very clear screen, and I really like that. One thing I really like about the center display is that you do get to select your engine sound. So there's Stealth, Tour, and Sport, and there's also Auto. It'll decide for you. But if you want to keep your car super loud, you can do that. If you want to keep your car super quiet, you can do that. If you have particularly angry neighbors, or if you live in a big, like a duplex or an apartment complex, and you don't want to piss anyone off, you can keep it in stealth mode. Or if you want to hear the screaming bald eagles, you can keep it in sport mode all the time and make all of the noise every single place you go, which is probably what I would end up doing with this, just because it's a 6.2 liter. You might as well get some benefit out of it. But you have your Bluetooth, navigation, radio, anything you want to control is really run through the center screen. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing super special, but it's definitely modern. And if I'm going to pay the money for a Camaro, I want it to feel modern, and that's exactly what it is. Down below that, we just have our regular heating and air conditioning controls. I do like that it says the temperature in actual digits. I feel like this is fairly new for Camaros. And then one of my favorite features of modern Chevys is the fact that it has the vents that control the heating and cooling and your fan controls. They actually use the vent itself to run those controls, which I think is absolutely genius. Because I love physical buttons, I love tactile buttons, but I don't like it when there's too many buttons. I know I'm kind of a hypocrite in that way, but this is a nice way of integrating the buttons into the center dash without cluttering everything, because they have multiple purposes, and I really like that. Then we come to the shifter. Yes, it's an automatic shifter. You can move it to the left, plus minus if you want. It's a fine shifter. You're going to put it in drive, and then you're probably never going to touch it again, because you can just paddle shift and change modes, without touching the shifter, which, speaking of which, we do have a couple different modes. So we do have snow and ice. This is basically going to up your traction control. Then we have sport and tour. Of course, sport is pretty gnarly, as you guys saw earlier. Then we do have an electronic parking brake and traction control on and off. Real quick, we'll talk about the seats. The seats are Recaros, which normally, being a bigger guy, that is a death sentence for me. But these Recaros I actually fit in. I feel like a normal human being sitting in these. They actually hold you really well. They're really comfortable, and I could see myself sitting in one of these for a very, very long time without getting uncomfortable, which I cannot say about most other Recaros. If you look at my Ford ST videos, the Fiesta and the Focus, my RS video, those factory Recaros, they're so tight for me that I usually hate them, but these I really, really like. But speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so reluctantly, I will do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2020 Camaro LT1. It's about what I expected. I got a little coin holder. My head is viciously hitting the ceiling. If you are familiar with the Star Wars films, I will now be crushed by the seat. Can you move it back at all?
Move it towards you?
Yeah. So, oh God. Oh God. I'm getting crushed by seat. I kind of want you to go till it hurts.
It didn't hurt yet?
Ooh. Okay. All right. There's no way my feet are coming out of here. My feet are covered by the seat. This is a joke of a back seat. This does not count. So before we talk about looks, which I am excited about, let me explain to you why I said earlier that that's sort of the V6-ness of this. This is obviously not a V6 car, but the LT1 is sort of a mishmash of Camaros. It has the engine out of an SS, but the body of a V6, the interior of a V6, the gauges of a V6. If you are going to rent a 2020 Camaro on your next vacation, it's going to look identical to this, except for that engine. Along with that, it does have upgraded front brakes. It has 4-piston front brakes, but only still single-piston rear brakes. Of course, discs all around. That should be pretty obvious. And so the LT1, you can't call it an SS, but it's not a base model because it doesn't have the V6. It's sort of this weird mishmash of stuff. But going off of that, let's talk about the exterior, which this is garnet red. Looks absolutely fantastic. These are not the stock wheels on the car. They are HRE wheels off of actually Kyle's Camaro 2013 ZL1. He runs on those normally, but that is in the shop, so toss him on this with the nice tires. Overall, I like the look of the Camaro a lot. I've never seen this from an auto manufacturer where they immediately take something back, but if you look at some of the 2019 Camaros, they seem to have misplaced the Chevy bow tie, but it is back to looking good for the 2020s, which is going to be interesting. I think the 2019s with the really stupid and ugly front ends will become collectible because they are a one-year car, but collectible for the absolutely wrong reason of the fact that they're ugly and no one wants them. But I think the front end of this looks great. I think the rear end actually looks pretty good. There's not a whole lot going on. Obviously, higher trim levels will have more stuff back there, but I'm not mad at it, and I definitely love the color, and I definitely really like the hood scoop. Overall, I have to say I am really impressed with this car because I really thought that this was just going to be a base model with a V8, and honestly, on paper, it's not far from that, but the actual driving experience, it's so nice in here. It's quiet when you want it to be quiet. It screams when you want it to scream. The Recaros are great. The infotainment's great. It has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You know, the 10-speed, I could write a whole chapter book, a whole graphic novel about the 10-speed. I love it that much. It really is. It's just an amazing all-around car. I'm really happy with this. For a not extreme fire-breathing Camaro, this is really good. I think 2020 is going to go down in history as one of the best years for Camaros. I think hands down. It's a really solid car. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of GM parts bin stuff. And what I mean by that is you'll find these knobs, you'll find the steering wheel, you'll find all of this stuff in other GM products. They just manufacture one steering wheel and put it into 8 different cars. But GM has really upgraded their parts bin. The 2013 Camaro that I drove, it felt cheap and it felt outdated on the interior. But this, it doesn't feel outdated. It feels super modern, and I really like that. GM has actually, they have a nice parts bin now, which you can't say about earlier years. One thing I really don't like about the Camaros is the poor visibility. It's a muscle car, it's to be expected. I know some people say that it's not a muscle car, that it's a sports car. In my book, this is a muscle car, and one of those check marks you have to have is that they have horrible visibility, and of course the Camaro does check that box. Overall, that's really all I can say about the Camaro LT1, is that I think Chevy's really sort of hitting their stride with this Camaro. I've always been a big fan of Camaros. That's not to say that like I've hated past Camaros and this is the one that, you know, changes the tune of my, you know, song. I think that this is really good. If I were to buy a Camaro, it would be worth it to spend the extra money on a 2020 as opposed to buying a, say, 2015. I would go out of my way to spend more on this. And I think that says a lot. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys learned something about the 2020 Camaro LT1. Huge thank you to Kyle for letting me take this thing out. This transmission is so good. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really like to. Take care, guys.
Aside from my soul.